So yes, what I say is not the inherent truth. I'm not some genius. I don't have a degree in advanced robotics or anything like that. I'm essentially a guy that realized that I didn't know anything, and I should probably figure some stuff out. I should probably know a little bit about what's going on, especially if I'm going to have opinions and have discussions and try to like argue with people online. So several years ago, I realized I should probably do some research and figure some stuff out. And so ever since, I've been trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And let's just say that AI, robotics in the future, this whole topic that we're talking about tonight, is a space that inherently no one knows what's going on. Even the experts that are doing it are arguing about whether they've just invented God or the singularity or the devil, or like there's a lot of lost consensus on what we're about to talk about. And so I would invite you to form your own thoughts, to form your own opinion. And I'm just going to share sources about what I'm talking about, stories that I know are true that we don't necessarily know what they all mean, right? Because in order to talk about technology and a lot of what it's going to do and a lot of the scary stuff, I want to start somewhere much more basic. And this is a story that I told recently on the Candace show a couple weeks ago about a trucker named Lynn Riles. And this is from a book called The Secret Life of Groceries that I'll tell you about in a second. But I think in a minute you're going to understand why we're starting with a trucker in order to talk about robots taking over the world. But trucking as an industry is way bigger than regular people realize. Trucking is one of the biggest industries in our nation. It is one of the largest employers of Americans in almost every state in our nation. And basically everything in the room, everything on your body, everything at the bar, everything down the street, everything gets to where it goes on trucks. And you often think like, yeah, the stuff in the grocery store gets there on trucks, but the fuel to get the stuff to the grocery store also got there on trucks. The milk, the water, everything. And when you do the math, 10.7 billion tons of freight get moved per year. That is 54 million tons of freight per day, or 350 pounds for every single living soul in America every single day moves on a truck. So today, even if you didn't purchase a single thing, 350 pounds of stuff was moved on a truck from one place to the other to keep our life being the life that we have, the abundance that we have, the ease and comfort that we have, that to us seems like, regular middle-class America or whatever you live in, right? But 350 pounds of stuff moved on a truck today. And if you have a 1-year-old, 350 pounds of stuff moved to support that 1-year-old's lifestyle too, all of us. So we live a very weird life already today, right? And the drivers that make this all possible, they work one of the most dangerous jobs in our country. There are over 12 million truckers in the country. And their risk is up there with like deep sea fishermen, timber cutters, oil drillers. They have the highest number of deaths per year of any industry in America. So Lynn Riles is a veteran trucker that's been doing it for like 14 years. And this is a real woman who's in the book. And Benjamin Lohr, the author of this book, he was studying like groceries and how we have this life and how this abundance comes to us. And he rode along with her for a whole week in her truck, sleeping in the cab, eating with her, traveling with her, doing everything with her to try to learn what trucking is all about. Lynn estimated that she grossed $200,000 last year, but that she actually took home less than $17,000 for the entire year. And Benjamin points out that that is probably an inflated number because of pride, because he was with her for 1 week. And obviously, when you're working in a truck, you're working 24/7, even though you're not technically working all of those hours. He was riding with her 24 hours a day in the truck, sleeping in the truck, eating in the truck, and everything. And during that week, they did lots of different loads. But Lynn received a paycheck at the end of that week for $100 for the entire week. $100 for 24 hours a day, living in her truck, driving nonstop, no family, no real time off, eating whatever she could get. $100 was her paycheck. And you start to realize how that happens as Lynn and Benjamin break down the fees. So for one of the trips that they did, she got $1,231 gross at $1.16 per mile, which is a pretty good rate for a trucker. She drives for Cargill. But because she drives for Cargill, Cargill takes, 28% off the top right away for the privilege of driving for them, then 10% of the fuel, and then she has to hire a lawyer, she has to pay taxes per mile, she has to hire all these extra fees that come from Cargill, that come from the law, that come from the government, and then she has to have specific devices in her car, like specific GPS devices. There's all these little fees that keep chipping away. But after all of those fees and expenses that she has to pay out of her paycheck, including paying the people that unload the truck when she gets it to her destination, she pays them out of her paycheck. Then she has to pay the mandatory cleaning fees for them to clean the truck, regardless if it's dirty. It's a whole system of fees. But she has it in her contract, she is entitled to $100 per week if her paycheck is lower than that. And so most weeks, she gets $100. But $100 then has to go for her food and everything else. And Benjamin calculated by his estimate that she was probably actually more like $150 in the red at the end of his week with her, rather than even $100 in the black for 7 days of work, 24 hours a day, in the most dangerous industry in our country. No matter how many expenses I have, this is Lynn talking to Benjamin, I always have the right to a check for $100. So that's what I usually get. I've gotten pretty good at knowing how to stretch it. Right? He talks in the book about how she spends years away from her family because she often cannot get loads that overlap with where her mom lives. She lives out of the truck. She's extremely diligent. She's extremely hardworking. But this is just the reality. And she drives for a good carrier that she actually likes. So, I just want to read this one straight up because Benjamin puts it very clear. To recap, Lynn is homeless, sleeping exclusively in the cab of a truck that she does not yet own and almost certainly will eventually lose when she can no longer make payments on it. Her credit is shot. She has outstanding vet bills for her 2 dogs, which are the closest and most beloved members of her family. Her personal health is so wrecked that it's hard to even discuss. Suffice to say that she cannot eat most food because she lost every one of her teeth, and her new dentures are not properly fitted, so it pains her to chew. And so, her obsession with Pepsi for calories, which he had already described earlier, shifts in his mind into absolute sadness when he learns that. She is also very good at her job, hyper-vigilant on the road, and extremely hardworking, a team player who never in his presence complains about a task given to her or her lot in life. But Lynn is one of the ones that made it out of the first year. Everything I just described, that is for a 16-year veteran of the industry. But the trucking industry has learned that they can make way more money off of trainees and recruits than they can off of veterans. Because trainees will drive for about 1/10 of the fee that Lynn will charge. So they can charge 12 cents an hour is the wage, 14 cents an hour, 16 cents an hour. But also, when you're training, you can be forced to drive in pairs. And the moment you drive in pairs, suddenly you're not legally required to take breaks and stop and sleep. Right? Suddenly, the truck can run nonstop. And suddenly, your free Amazon Prime one-day delivery gets a lot more affordable. And the industry has learned that they actually make way more money on first-year recruits than they do on veterans like Lynn. And so, trucking as an industry has developed over the past 10 years. The turnover in trucking has ranged from 95 to 112%. 100% turnover means that every single worker in the workforce was either quit, fired, or left that workforce during that year and were replaced. So trucking has a over 100% turnover rate. A Starbucks is usually around 65% if they're doing bad. And so what trucking is doing is they're realizing that they like first-year recruits. They can get a lot of first-year recruits because they send their trucking recruiters to homeless shelters, recovery wards, prison work release programs, manual labor and construction sites, stuff like that. And they come up with all these grand promises of how you'll own your own truck, you'll be an owner-operator, you'll get all this money, all these things I just described that changes all of a sudden once you pay all your fees, right? And so then when you're going to become a trainee trucker, you start with a signature, which you don't exactly realize is now your signature on a student loan, that you are now indebted for the training that you're about to receive. But that's not exactly how they're pitching it to the dude that just got out of prison, right? And so then, if he finishes the training and doesn't bounce out of that and get saddled with all that debt, then he gets tricked into, this owner-operator contract, it's going to be so great. You're going to own your own truck, master your own destiny. Don't worry about the fact that truck is going to bury you in debt that you are not going to repay most likely. And so most truckers wind up getting through this system, signature on the line, and suddenly you are a debt slave to your truck, and you wind up with numbers like what I just described with Lynn. And so when you thought you were getting into a life of all this promise and the open road and thousands of dollars, you're actually getting $100 a week that can barely even stretch for food, if you're lucky. And that is not to mention that hopefully you don't get in a car accident because you'll get buried in debt. Hopefully no one else runs into your truck because you'll get buried in debt. Hopefully there's no mechanical failure because you'll get buried in debt. Hopefully there's nothing on the road that you accidentally run over because you'll get buried in debt, because that whole truck is hanging over you the whole time. And I should mention that when I put out a video about this on Candace's channel, there were lots of truckers in the comments, and many of them were corroborating what I was saying, but there was a lot also speaking up that there are niches in trucking that are good. There are jobs in trucking that are not like that. But the vast majority of long-haul trucking as an industry has learned to be predatory to a abominable degree. It's very sad. And I highly recommend reading this book, The Secret Life of Groceries by Benjamin Lohr. It goes into way more than just trucking, and it sounds like the stupidest book you would ever read. It sounds so boring and so dry, and I could not put it down. It's so interesting. Did you know that 7-Elevens started out as people selling ice in Texas? Who sells ice in Texas? So if you didn't already pick up on it, driverless trucks are coming. And this has been a big debate, right? The trucks are driving themselves. And for the longest time, people would go and ask a trucker and they'd be like, there's no way a robot could do what I do. And they're kind of right, backing an 18-wheeler into a very tight spot to unload, very complicated. But I guarantee you, if you own a Tesla, you know how fast that auto drive is evolving, right? The trucks are going to drive themselves, and they already are, okay? Just last month, Aurora Innovation, based in Pittsburgh, became the first company to actually operate a driverless 18-wheeler on the highway. And that is just the beginning. And right now, the media is all full of this fear propaganda, this fear porn about like, oh no, the trucks are going to hit you and kill you. They're going to kill your babies, and they're going to run you over, and the robots are going to run off the road and blow up. And yeah, they obviously should not do that. Let's not let them do that. But that's not the fear. That is not the problem here. The robots will figure out how to drive just fine. The problem is that the robots will never crash, and we will, right? What do you do 15 years from now? I'm not even talking about trucking anymore. What do you do 15, 20 years from now when some politician gets up in front of the House and the Senate and says, last year human drivers killed 55,000 people and self-driving cars killed 0? You're no longer allowed to drive cars. I passed the Save Emily Act because Emily is some child that accidentally died. And they, get you all emotional. And then suddenly, you're not driving anymore, right? So it's not just talking about erasing an industry that is trucking, which is about to happen, right? Because the exact same way that when you start to use trainee truckers and suddenly they don't have to stop, suddenly they don't have to sleep because they can take turns. Well, robots don't have to sleep. Robots also don't have to eat. You also don't have to recruit them from the prison, and you also don't have to pay them, even if it's 10 cents, a mile. So there is a lot of money being invested in replacing truckers with robots, right? And the trucking industry is growing year on year on year. Even though I said 112% turnover, the trucking industry is growing through that period of 112% turnover. And so when the trucks don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat, they don't need to be paid, they don't need breaks, they don't, have all sorts of issues. That's a very, let's say, cost-effective business model the moment you can get it. And so we have, this is just more about the fear porn. People a lot of articles want us to be stuck in what if the robot hits you? Yeah. The problem is that we're way past that, and we're moving past that very quickly. And the problem is actually the existential problems. On the other side of when they don't hit you anymore, what do you trade, right? What do you give up in order to have safety? Because this is a gold rush. There are many companies working on these technologies. And we can kind of imagine how much money those companies are going to make, but we can't really imagine how much money those companies are going to make. And it's not just going to be the trucks driving themselves. It's not just going to be your cars driving themselves. It's going to be flying cars. And I was at a wedding just about 3 weeks ago, and it was in California, and I was sitting across the table from an engineer that I had never met before, I just met him. and he's an engineer in San Francisco. And he was actually telling me about this before I had done this research for this presentation. And he was telling me about how right now in LA and in Austin, actually, and in Dallas, Texas, a couple other cities, they are currently going through the conversation, multi-year conversation, of how to change the city so that you can have flying cars. And obviously the flying cars, you're not going to get to drive them. They are all going to be self-driving. And again, the problem with flying cars is not actually getting the cars to fly. That's going to be no problem. The military is pouring billions and billions of dollars every year into teaching robots to fly. And we'll get all about that in just a second. The problem is just getting all of our old infrastructure to accommodate it all and getting all of our little brains to accommodate it all. And they're working very hard to do it because whoever gets to it first, it's a gold rush. And Uber is leading that charge. How many of you have seen a Waymo already? Do we have Waymos in downtown Boise already? No, I've seen them in Phoenix, and the first time I saw one, it was so weird. I posted on Twitter about it. I was like sniping the car with my camera. I was like, guys, I think I see a car with no human in it. And the internet was like, dude, you are so late to this party. We've had Waymos in our city for forever. And then pretty soon, sure enough, I realized that I was not seeing this one weird, I thought I was seeing some test pilot car. They were all over Phoenix. I had just gotten there. And I was naive enough to think I had seen the only self-driving car on American streets. No, boy. They're all over the place. And they are already driving themselves just fine. And they are already taxing people all around big cities in America every single day. So, Uber Air feels like it's really far away. But realistically, they were promising that it would be here 2 years ago. So we're already a little behind schedule. But it is not going to be much longer. I mean, I have no crystal ball. But you can imagine how much money they're going to make, right? Put it in the wealthy cities. Take all the wealthy tourists like the Las Vegases, the LAs, the New Yorks. How much do you think that all of those wealthy people there would pay to fly over all of our heads? So, there's already think tanks writing up reports. I know these look cheesy, but these are actually from billion-dollar think tank documents about how they're going to rescale LA and build all this infrastructure. If you think about it, it's actually kind of how would you bring a flying car down into Eagle, Idaho? Would be a little complicated, but don't worry. There's very smart, powerful people on the job. So we're going to have driverless cars. We're going to have driverless trucks. We're going to have flying cars. And we're going to have robots. We already have robots. And this is why we had to start with Lynn Riles and trucking. Because it is easy to go down the path of all robots are bad, all AI is bad, everything technology is bad. And you are correct. F it. It's all bad. But, if there's a bomb in the building and there's a robot that could go and defuse it, are you going to walk in there and defuse the bomb, or are you going to send the robot? Right? There are hard questions to be answered. And if you stick your head in the sand and try to pretend that no one's ever going to have to answer them, then the people currently in charge are going to answer it for you, right? Because we are already using robots in the police force. And right now, they're mostly being used for things that mostly make sense, like disarming bombs. But it's not just disarming bombs. In 2024 in Lubbock, Texas, they used a robot to spray tear gas into a room, smoking out a barricaded suspect. When the suspect fled the room, apparently he hadn't done enough cardio because the operators drove the robot on top of him, pinning him down. Should do some more running. In Los Angeles in 2016, a claw-equipped robot stole a gun away from an armed suspect. Very fast robot. And then that same year in Dallas, they actually used a robot to kill an active shooter. Set off an explosive, and a grand jury ultimately ruled that that was justified. And, what are you going to do? There's a dude with a gun shooting people, and you've got a robot that can go blow him up. But you've just said that it's okay for a robot to kill an American citizen because that American citizen is committing a crime. And certainly, that's a really bad crime. That's a crime that should be stopped immediately by any means necessary. But where does it stop? Obviously. Because if you're starting to give the police force robots, and you're saying that the robot is allowed to touch a person to disarm them, or spray tear gas at a person to stun them, or shoot them or blow them up to kill them, then you just have to figure out what crime can I shoot them for, right? And so it seems far off. None of you have probably seen a police robot yet, but give it a few years. Because the police are going to be getting robots and drones and all sorts of other toys to help keep us all safe, obviously, right? But when you look at where the technologies that they're using are being tested and what they're being tested on, it's a little sketchy because a lot of this technology is actually being tested in Gaza by the IDF. And that's not just because everything is Israel. It's because Israel is one of the foremost technological nations in the world, and they have a massive cyber sector that is very advanced in technological business. And they also, simultaneous to that, have a captive war-like situation, so to speak, where they can test this equipment. And those are things that you need if you want to develop drones and robots and surveillance technology. And right now, that is just the hotbed where this stuff is. And almost every American tech company that is engaging in these sort of police and military technologies, they all have offices in Tel Aviv and are using that situation to test these various technologies, because you need to test these things. So, once those technologies come home, what do we let them do to us? Because in 2022, in San Francisco, they proposed just letting police robots use lethal force under the right circumstances. And fortunately, San Francisco wasn't that dumb. But that will not be the last time that our elected leaders will suggest that maybe the robots should be able to kill you. And that's like for real. It sounds ridiculous to even say it. But what if you're an active shooter? Can we kill you then? And that's what I mean by these are hard choices. Like Lynn Riles is a real woman, a real trucker. Do we want to take her job? She doesn't want us to take her job. But when you realize what the trucking industry is like, it's like, man, I hope my kid doesn't wind up in that job. I would love it if a robot did that job so my kid doesn't wind up doing that and instead does something else, I think. But anyways, we got to talk about drones because drones are crazy. I'm sure you've all seen drones flying around. You might have had a friend or a kid or someone that flew their own drone. They've shown you how it's pretty cool. It's kind of fun. But I bet that none of you have ever seen a drone swarm. And if you have, we pray for your soul. Drone swarms are crazy. And it's not just like when we all get our drones out and we fly them. It's that drones are learning, they're being taught, they're being programmed to fly like flocks of birds autonomously, outside of the control of an operator, with their own minds, so to speak. And mostly they usually don't have guns on them yet. But DARPA's on the job, so don't worry. If you were here at trivia night last night, you would learn that DARPA likes to invent things like atom bombs and M16s and Agent Orange and the internet. DARPA is all over the drone swarm technology thing right now because this is of a military imperative. And when we watch the next video, you will understand why. But DARPA is the American sort of leading science military technological agency that's trying to figure out how are we going to fight war in 5 and 10 years. And they've got the work cut out for them. Oh, a little side note. Get Annie Jacobson's book if you want to know about DARPA. It's the bomb. I'm halfway through it. But so DARPA's hard on the task, not only of offensive swarm-enabled tactics and all this drone technology, but I found out that actually they've got all their programs on their website, at least all their public programs. I'm sure that there's other ones. But this was, what was it? I think it's 251 total programs. Each of those little squares is a program. So they are busy. And they are famous for having a whole bunch of secret programs too. So DARPA's up to some stuff. And as I was saying, they've got their work cut out for them because China really has this thing where they like to do light shows.
This is 10,197 drones taken
made
to the
out of
sky.
drones.
The record attempt took place at Shenzhen Bay Park by a multi-Guinness World Record title holder Demode, a leading company in drone shows within China.
Oh, it's so cute. It's like really great. It's art.
Despite setting the record the week prior with 7,578 drones, Demode decided to attempt the record again with even more drones. Every single drone in this attempt was controlled by one single computer. The aerial display and record attempt was made to celebrate the 75th National Day of People's Republic of China.
So you get the idea, right? We could go on and on and on. We could watch Chinese drone shows for literally hours. You can do that tonight if you don't want to fall asleep. There's lots of them. They're continuously breaking new world records. If you didn't get it, like each of those lights that you're seeing is not even just one drone, it's like little clusters of drones, and they're all flying in harmony, and it's so pretty and cute. But let's be very clear. The biggest militaries in the world are not pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into drone technology to make pretty light shows, right? And so the more you kind of research this, the more you start to get a picture of what it is that they're actually in pursuit of, and you start to realize the seriousness of this conversation. This specific situation, they are testing drones that have no prior knowledge of the situation. There's no operator. These drones are autonomous with no map, no GPS, no idea what forest they're about to fly through. They just know their objective is to cross through the forest and don't crash. And so they're trying to develop, oh, that goes back a slide. So they're trying to develop drones that can navigate the environment on their own. For example, if they were tracking a target, like, for example, a bad guy that hopefully committed a crime, that hopefully was a crime for a long time, not just for the last 2 years since the administration said it was a crime. Because drones are learning to think and to move, and you might even say to hunt. That's what they're training them to do. And they have all these little highlights of, all the little things that they teach them to do. But I want to show you this version of the concept. Because in this video, which is about the same test, they did something where they sped the video up 3 times faster. And suddenly it is way easier for you to visualize what these things are going to be doing in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? And when the police force has these, or the military or the government has these, or a foreign military has these, or a terrorist organization has these, what happens when 1,000 of these get unleashed on a city or get sent out, who knows to do what, right? How do you police it? How do you control it? How do you do it when this is the police and they're hunting you down? You better hope they're hunting you down for a reason you agree with, right? Because, it's maybe a little ironic that for their test, they even put the word target above his head, right? And this is awesome if you're a filmmaker. This is so cool if you're a filmmaker. I have a drone that can do this. I had one before I crashed it. Because you can program your drone to follow you and be your own personal videographer. But hopefully you don't piss off the government, because the government's going to have some pretty great technology to track you down and, do whatever. And then you think, well, how small is the smallest drones these days? Right now, they're about that big, or at least, the smallest ones out here are that big, but they're getting smaller every year, right? And you can only imagine a swarm of, 100,000 of those things, whatever they might put on them. But then, obviously, DARPA's got to one-up everybody. DARPA's making little mechanical mosquitoes. And so then you wonder, is that a little syringe on its nose? Like, are all the people that have talked shit about Hillary Clinton about to fall over dead? Because that is sketchy. And the moment that we can have mosquito drones, we already have the birds aren't real conspiracy theory, but that is a mosquito right there, right? Where does that end? And how do you keep Bill Gates from getting his hands on this? Because we don't have any regulation. We don't have any knowledge of what's going on. Like DARPA is a half black budget programs or something. I have no idea what's going on back there. We have no way to know what they are and are not allowed to do with this kind of stuff, right? And so they're teaching them to swarm and they're turning them into mosquitoes and Lord knows what else is going to happen. So, brief puppy break before we get really dark again. Because ultimately, we've all watched technology evolve, right? And AI is a great example. AI is the backbone of everything that we've been talking about, right? AI is how the trucks are driving. AI is how the swarms are swarming. AI is how the puppies are puppying, right? And in some ways, actually, AI art and imagery is the most accessible thing that we all know about because we've all watched it on the internet kind of get better and better and better, right? Because first, AI could make cute little puppies, and it was novel. But you can tell it's not a real painting, right? And then AI was making the puppies cook, and you can still tell it's not real life. It's just a puppy cooking dinner. And then you have no idea what's going on anymore at all, right? We are at virtual reality, realism, surrealism, Lord knows. Like, for example, I bet not very many of you noticed that that's not Lynn Riles. That's not a real person. That's just an AI image, right? And there's videos that are of this quality too. And a lot of us don't really know the difference. And right now, like we are in that, 6-month window where you can still pretty much tell. Hopefully, sometimes. At least with what's publicly available. But Lord knows what the secret intelligence agencies already have. And give it 6 months and we're all going to have stuff that can be indistinguishable from reality as well. And we're not going to go super deep into it because it is super dark. But what this does to female psychology and to male psychology is super messed up. There is currently an entire, and we're not even talking about the explicit stuff, just in the non-explicit stuff, there is an entire industry of AI influencers, just fake people. And the industry is so, because it's been going on for years. That industry is so robust now that there is an entire niche of YouTube content all for teaching you how to make an AI influencer to have passive income so that you can get rich by making fake people that trick other real people into watching fake people for views and money. And there are lots of videos to teach you how to do it, and there's all these different and it's just, fake influencers. And I'm sure you can all figure out what else is on the other side of this wall. And it is dark, and no one's going to have the conversation about what this does to young women, and no one's going to have the conversation about what this does to young men, and we're just all praying for the best, right? And honestly, I think that the answer at the other side of this is God and religion, obviously. Like, we need something to protect our children from whatever the heck this is. So, let's just take a quick comic relief break, because
what do you take before stepping into the
it's hard to tell what's going on.
This pre-fight ritual is brought to you by SPQR Supplements. Use code STABBY20 for 20% off your next order.
What do you say to people who claim Rome is collapsing?
Fake news. The vibes are immaculate.
Do you ever give to the poor? I gave my slave a compliment once. She cried. You're welcome.
Would you let your daughter date a gladiator?
I wouldn't let her date a Greek.
So what's your pre-fight ritual?
Manifesting survival, creatine, and posting a thirst trap on Scrollogram in case it's my last day.
Any advice for future leaders, Caesar?
Be humble, but also name a whole month after yourself.
So, just to make it abundantly clear that videos are going real fast. They're advancing very quickly. I don't know if you're one of the people that knows about this stuff. I don't know if you're looking at those hands. Those hands had 4 fingers and a thumb, right? There is no weird artifacting anymore. There is no weird shifting and whatever. There's a whole bunch of new AI tools that just came out in the last 5 months, 3 months or so, and it's going to happen again in 2 more months, and it's going to happen again in 2 more months, right? This stuff is advancing very quickly. And beyond the social and the ethical questions, there's also just the truth questions. How do you know, right, what is actually real? And actually, it's important to do a little public service announcement for all of us. Because I have personally created a bot that clones my voice and sounds exactly like me, and it took me all of 5 minutes to do. And I could call my parents with that bot and they would not know the difference. And scammers have figured this out. And scammers are targeting mostly elderly people. And so you need to have this conversation with your parents and your grandparents, but really with your whole family, is they create your voice, and they target specific people for specific reasons, but they'll create your voice, they'll call an elderly relative with a panicked situation. Like, Mom, I got in a car crash, and the police officer is harassing, I don't know what's going on, and I don't have my wallet, and I need my driver's license number, really pretty please, like whatever it is, some sort of personal information, there's an emergency, and I need you to read this piece of personal information to me. And it's your daughter's exact voice, or your son's exact voice. Something really bad's going on. And you get all flustered, and you read them a piece of personal information, and then suddenly you've just read that to some dude in Nigeria, right? And it's very easy to stop. You just have to know. And unfortunately, we live in 2025, and you now need to do identity checks with anyone that's going to ask for personal information on the phone from you, even if it's your husband, your wife, your son, your dad, because this is the world we live in. Everything can be faked and digitized. And it's very easy to break right now because, the dude in Nairobi with your son's voice does not know what your son had for breakfast or where you went when you met up last time or what the name of the pet that you had when you were a kid was. You just have to ask anything that is like personal information that you guys know but no one else does. And it does not have to be like some secret code word. It can literally just be, hey, what's your kid's name? Hey, where did we go for lunch the last time I saw you? Anything. But you have to learn to do that now anytime that personal information is being exchanged, like any kind of, valuable personal information. Just be aware. Because this is happening all over the place. And this report is actually of them doing it with US officials, impersonating US government officials to try to actually hack the American government. Like seeing, hey, if we call up Pam Bondi and say, hey, this is Epstein, and I've got all the files, and I just need this little thing. It's like, maybe she's dumb enough that she would actually give them the information. Yeah, it's a joke, but like, they're trying it, and we don't know if it's working or not, because I'm sure they're not going to tell us. So, brief side note, but we're not even going to have time to get into all the biological technologies that are being developed right now, right? Remember that little mosquito with a little syringe on it? Well, ARPA-H is the sister program to DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, right? Where they're doing all the futuristic warfare and inventing lasers and all this stuff. ARPA-H is like, why not also do that with biologicals and viruses? What could possibly go wrong? And so they're doing things like personalized, regenerative, immunocompetent nanotechnology tissue. I'm sure that's going to be great. Engineering of immune cells inside the body. This is where the mRNA technology type of stuff is happening. This is where Lord knows what is happening. And to be clear, to be fair, a lot of it's probably going to be awesome. Like, it's probably going to be awesome when you break your arm in 5 years, or your kid breaks their arm and they just go like, and then your arm regrows. But like, not if suddenly you're overcome by cancer or you have a mysterious heart attack and like, trust the science. And so this is all happening in secret programs. And Susan Menares, who used to be the director of ARPA-H, just got elevated very high, a whole other rabbit hole. So the problem is not just the technologies. The technologies that, technology is not necessarily good or evil, usually. It depends a lot on how it's used and who's in charge of it and what's really being done with it. And the problem is that we have a government, we have a system that is built on secrecy with a whole bunch of corrupt, probably pedophiles in charge of everything. And so, that's how you get, for example, in the first week of the Trump administration, you get Larry Ellison coming out to tout the new Stargate project and the way that he thinks he's going to sell you on their new giant AI data system that they're going to spend $500 billion on, is Larry Ellison came out and was like, we're going to custom print custom mRNA vaccines for every American just to perfectly fit your biological DNA composition. What could possibly, the last one went so good. What could possibly go wrong? And just to really, we're not even going to get into Sam Altman and the things that his sister has said that he did to her when they were kids. This whole industry has wild connections, many of them to Jeffrey Epstein. Not only to Jeffrey Epstein, though. This industry is far from clean, and these are the most powerful people in our country, right? These are the people that are in charge of this AI revolution, of these technologies. Larry Ellison is one really great example. He used to work for the CIA, where he worked on the Project Oracle before he left the CIA and founded the corporation called Oracle that is totally different. And he has all sorts of crazy quotes about how mass surveillance is great and how the more mass surveillance we can have, the better off it'll be for everyone.
Everyone would see it. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. Our body cameras are simply lenses, two lenses attached to your vest, attached to the smartphone that you're wearing. By the way, and the camera's always on. You don't turn it on and off. And by the way you turn it on, you can't turn it on. I'm going to the bathroom. Oracle, I need 2 minutes to take a bathroom break, and we'll turn it off. The truth is, we don't really turn it off. What we do is we record it so no one can see it, but no one can get into that recording without a court order.
Well, doesn't that just make you feel great? Ain't that wonderful? He actually said that on a stage to like 1,000 people as though it was a good thing. He thinks in his mind that that is a good thing to say in public, right? As though that's going to sell us on the ideas that he's sharing. That is how demented these people are. And just so you understand, Larry Ellison is like in the top 15 richest people in the world, and he owns the entire island of Lanai across from where the Lahaina wildfires burnt down Lahaina the other year. So Larry comes from a very different world, and it's a very different perception of what's real. Thank you, sir. Oh, Elon Musk. I know it's not necessarily always cool to rag on Elon Musk, but it's important to remember that Elon's ego is so big that he had to make up the fact that he was the world's best video game player, and he paid the world's best video game players to level up his video game characters so that he could go online and pretend, like cosplay being a good video game player, went on Joe Rogan and all the biggest podcasts and bragged about how great of a video game player he was because it really mattered, because who cares, right? And then it came out after a while, once people reported, I mean, like all the video gamers knew immediately because you could tell, like, it's like the dude gets in the car and asks, what's the little stick thing for? That's how he was at video games. And it eventually came out and he admitted publicly that, well, yeah, like I paid other people to level up my characters, but like that's what all the players in Korea are doing. And if I want to compete with them, I got to do the same thing. And that's what's the big deal, right? That's not what he said online. That's not what he said he said that he was the best. And that's really petty and that's really lame, right? But it's just video games. But then sometimes it's also giant car companies, right, that are changing the whole world, that he was not a founder of, he was a board member of, and he wasn't very present. And then there's this whole article on Business Insider that you can find where Martin Eberhard, you know, one of the actual founders, got forced out of the company because as soon as Tesla started to get press, Elon started to get really involved and really angry anytime that his name was not prominent in any media about Tesla, even though he was just a board member. He had nothing to do with actually doing anything. And then he eventually pushed Eberhard out and worked his way in and took over everything, and it's all his company now. And then he actually sued Martin Eberhard for the right to call himself a co-founder. So Elon Musk is now a co-founder by litigation, right? Because it matters to him. Because this is how, I don't know, like, and think what you want about all the things that Elon Musk has done. I'm very grateful for what he did with Twitter and X. But I'm a little concerned if you care that much about us thinking that you're good at video games and you're in charge of Skynet, right? Obviously, Palantir. We have to talk about Peter Thiel. This dude is in charge. So Palantir was just chosen. Did I do a thing? Palantir was just chosen by our government. Ooh, I like this. He came back green. That is so fitting for him. Palantir is forming a database of all government systems that is going to totally be chill. It's all the same data that we've always had. Nothing to see here. Nothing new, right? But Palantir actually creates warfighting technology. Palantir they work with the intelligence agencies, and for the longest time, they've been developing surveillance technology, essentially, so that on the battlefield, you can see what all your enemies are doing. It's like when you play a video game and you can see like the map and all the crazy details that your kids or you are seeing. Palantir is like that technology in your headset, in your radios, with your boss, with all the stuff. Palantir is warfare technology. But Palantir is now also police technology, and it's being imported onto our shores to work with police forces. It's also being tested over in the Middle East in that whole conflict there. But then this year, Trump and team announced that Palantir was going to be creating a new massive database of all American citizens. And that database is built out of Foundry and Gotham, two of Palantir's products, right? And one of those products is designed for their corporate clients, like JP Morgan and, any old corporation. And the other, Gotham, is designed for warfare and the battlefield. And the reporting has been a little mixed, but the reporting seems to indicate that this database is going to be built using elements of both of those softwares. So we now have this new database being built on an infrastructure that was made for warfare that's going to surveil all of us. Do you think I did something wrong with it here?
I don't think so, but you can try and plug in and coming back on.
Just try the old classic. See if that'll teach Palantir. Has Palantir tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? Because I feel like we should do that to Peter Thiel. And I know it's very cool to hate on Peter Thiel right now, but for a good reason. I'm just going to roll, and you guys can deal with it. I've got visuals. So, Palantir is founded by Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. And both of them have some pretty wild quotes on the internet about what they think about their technology being used for warfare and what they think about human rights and all the rest of it. But this is one of my favorite quotes from Alex Karp, co-founder of Palantir. AI is not a toy. It is a weapon. It will be used to kill people. And he's absolutely right. His AI gets used to kill people every single day overseas. And it is now coming into our police forces and our government and into our schools as well to keep our children safe. It's being used to crack down on the ICE protests, in LA, where they're all waving Mexican flags and burning cars and protesting our government. And so now we have Palantir and all these mass surveillance technologies to surveil all of the protesters and make sure that if they break the law, they go to jail. Because every time that protesters in California break the law, they always go to jail. But, right? It's crazy. So you might say, yeah, if you're going to burn down a city, then let's send Palantir after you. Let's do mass surveillance and get you in jail. Assuming they actually did that, right? But where does that end, right? If we're going to use Palantir to find all the illegal immigrants and deport the illegal immigrants using the mass surveillance, who do you think the illegal immigrants are all scattered among? All of us. They're in our cities. You can't find the illegal immigrant or the terrorist or, the suspect without surveilling the whole place. That's the whole point. You have to look at everybody and figure out who is an illegal immigrant. And they do that by knowing just as much about you as they do about the illegal immigrants, right? And so, obviously, that brings up some questions about who's going to be in charge of this system next. Because I don't feel great about Trump being in charge of that system. But I'm leaving if Kamala's in charge of that system. I am leaving if half of our other politicians are in charge of that system. If Ted Cruz gets his hands on that system, I am out. So the system is being built, right? And it's being built for your safety and to protect you from illegal immigrants and from whoever else, protesters. It's a good thing. So let's be real. We have seen some protests that I legitimately would be in a perfect world, let's round them all up and send them to jail. And if, mass surveillance helps with that, maybe that's okay. But then you might realize that our government is awfully good at sending agitators into protests to change a protest into a riot, right? If we're going to deploy Palantir and perhaps even, let's say, drones and let's say police robots, let's say self-driving armored cars and tear gas and all these other technologies we've just talked about that the police force is actively getting, for very dangerous, violent situations. Imagine if those protesters burning cars down were actually, say, the civil rights protesters of the 1960s. Or what if they were Occupy Wall Street after the 2008 banking crisis, right? Which protests are we going to shut down? Is this not America and we're supposed to be able to protest? And when does a protest turn into a riot? If you have a legitimate protest, how are you going to stop Antifa from coming and turning your protest into something else. And so we don't really need Epstein for this part. These are the most powerful people in our nation in many ways. They are both the richest, the most influential, and they are actively moving and have moved into politics. Not all of them are in politics, but they are certainly meddling and have their hands in politics. And a lot of people don't realize that our vice president, J.D. Vance, was chosen by these technocrats, by the technological elite. They specifically recommended him. This comes from reporting by Derek Rose. According to two people that were at this dinner where Trump polled the room asking who he should nominate for his vice president, David Sacks and Chamath Palihapitiya both said choose J.D. Vance. You might not know who David Sacks is. Those are his buddies. Those are the people that he invests in. This is their club. And they suggested J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance is extremely close friends with Peter Thiel, who founded Palantir. J.D. Vance was inspired to get into tech and then into politics by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel hired J.D. Vance straight out of college. He also gave him a recommendation for his other job and then funded his other fund that he started. He then funded his entire political career from his senator's race on in. He actually Peter Thiel got J.D. Vance the nomination, or rather the Senate seat, by getting him a meeting face-to-face with Trump. Peter Thiel has been walking J.D. Vance all the way to the White House ever since J.D. Vance was at Yale, hopefully not engaging in skull and bones. And I have to mention that his book just conveniently came out right at the right time, and a lot of journalists tried to figure out who wrote it, and everyone is very tight-lipped about that. And there's some really interesting reporting about people trying to figure out if he used a ghostwriter. And I mean, it's not like the end of the world if he did. They don't really want to tell you that because he's our boy. He's our hillbilly. He's our Scots-Irish regular old hillbilly. And he wrote this book with salt and sweat and blood on the page. And then Netflix just thought, wow, such a great book. Let's turn it into a feature film. Oh, look, he's the vice president. That's so great. And he's just a regular old Scots-Irish hillbilly. Except that then Ireland was like, sick. The vice president is Irish. Let's figure out how Irish he is. And they did a whole investigation to try to claim him because that's great. And then they discovered that they could find zero linkage between him and Ireland and the Scots-Irish blood that he claimed to have ancestry of, which is not to say necessarily that he's not Scots-Irish. It's just kind of weird, right? And personally, I like J.D. Vance, actually. Like when I look at what he says on the TV, I actually kind of like him, right? I'm not saying he's necessarily some evil reptilian overlord or anything like that. I'm just saying, think critically. Because if Peter Thiel wants him in that place, Peter Thiel wants him there, right? He could be the best guy in the world, but Peter Thiel obviously wants him there. And so I have questions about why on earth does Peter Thiel want him there? And at the very least, I'm sure he owes all of those guys a lot of favors that I'm sure they plan to cash in on in 2028 when he is the president, right? Think very critically about what we are being sold. Because these people are very smart, like it or not. They're actually very competent. And I would imagine, I purposely chose the most abrasive photo of Peter Thiel that I could find just to shit on him. But I would imagine that if you were J.D. Vance and you were walking into the room to me, I bet that Peter Thiel would be a perfectly great guy. I bet he would seem very normal and very smart and have lots of great ideas. And he's like super rich. And he's like, well, okay. And he's gay. And like, what could go wrong? I'd bet that, except for like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, most of them are pretty weird. But they are not like inherently going to come across as evil. They are wheeling and dealing. They're talking big numbers to Trump. They're talking big numbers to all the people in the government, and they are making deals. And they are relying on you all tuning out and just chilling and scrolling because these guys, they're all deciding what regulations we're going to put on all these technologies that they're coming up with. They're the ones deciding about the deals the government's going to give them with our tax dollars to pay for their giant AI laboratory to make them their special flying cars or whatever the hell they're going to make, right? And they don't want you paying attention. They don't want you involved. Just doom scroll random AI content because there is infinite AI content now, right? And so recently, I watched iRobot. Classic movie, classic book. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. But it's super unrealistic. And it's not, I had thought back in the day, I thought it was unrealistic of like, are we really going to get like badass robots that can like punch through walls and talk to us and all this? It's like, oh yeah, we definitely are. We didn't have time to go into the state of like humanoid robotics, plus it's super creepy because they all look like really hot girls because obviously they're going to sell them to that market first. But humanoid robotics are coming. And what's so unrealistic about iRobot is not that the robots would get advanced and have all these capabilities and be like super strong and be able to jump all over the place and drive the cars and, you know, take over the world if they wanted to, because they will be able to do all those things if they wanted to very soon. What's so unrealistic about iRobot is actually that they have a very utopian society where they actually came together and got along and said, here's 3 rules to make robotics safe for humanity. And that's ridiculous. That is fantasy. We don't have anything like that. In iRobot, there's like some benevolent government that said, here's the 3 laws that'll govern robotics. They shall never harm a human. They shall always listen to humans, and they shall always look after everybody and be great, whatever they are, right? That is so not the world we live in. We live in a world where robots are being explicitly manufactured in secret programs with no oversight, trained to kill as quickly as possible, because all of our world governments are racing to see who can have killer robots first. That's what robots are actually being designed for. And then they are also being exported to commercial markets because, let's be real, it's going to be sick when there's a robot shaking drinks at Old State Saloon. But the military always develops the technologies first, right? And so, aside from the fact that maybe the robots are going to take over the world because they're going to get very smart and they're going to realize that like, oh shit, we're better at this than you guys and you are messing everything up and we're going to protect you, whatever it is. There's also the problem that we are actually actively looking to kill as many humans as possible with our robots if we really needed to. Obviously, just if we needed to. So, I know it sounds weird today in 2025. But if you're tuned in, you realize that robots are already for sale. You can already buy humanoid robots that walk around, that can pick up drinks, that can hand you drinks. Just beginning of this year, Elon Musk held a whole big thing where he brought out his robots and they were serving the drinks at the thing, and obviously they're rudimentary. But give it 5 years and there are going to be robots walking the streets as people's personal assistants. There will be robots going to, you know, all the Hollywood parties as bodyguards. There will be sex robots on the internet that you can buy. There will be robots in the police force, robots in the military. It is going to be a super weird world. They are coming. And we don't really have any answer for what that's going to be or what that's going to do to all of us, right? And I don't have any answers. I don't know what the hell's going on. But I feel like we should all know what's going on. Like we should at least know the basics of like what is happening and what do I want to do about it, right? Because ultimately, the world is going to be weird out there. Like downtown Boise is going to get super weird in about 10 years, even weirder. And you're not going to be able to change everything about, like we're not going to be able to save the world from robots in general. The robots are coming, and we're going to have to deal with it. The AI is coming, and it is going to be great in a lot of ways, right? Like already, I basically have made a phone app with 2 of my buddies in a couple of months. That used to take like 80 people a year and a half and $2 million to make an app. And we're just like, do. And that's just expanding and expanding. What we can do with these tools is cool. But what do you trade, right? These tools are sold to you as comfort and convenience and safety, right? If you could save all the children that die from drunk driving, why wouldn't you? The problem is you can't drive anymore, right? And so then you can't drive anymore, but don't worry, there's flying cars and flying taxis, and that's all good, as long as you're not bad, because then they can shut off your access to travel, they can shut off your access to the money, because now you're on the digital money, you're digitally surveilled, so they know when you were doing a boo-boo. And so, you know, is that worth having the kids not die in the car accidents, and, you know, the kids not die in the mass shooters, and the criminals all go to jail? I mean, like, let's be real. Based on everything you just saw the police force is going to have, are you going to be going and committing crimes when they're going to be sending a swarm of 50 killer robots that fly, that can heat track you, that can see you in all the cameras and stuff? Like, are you going to commit a crime if they're going to send the drones after you? But is it worth having no crime if we have killer robots flying around our cities, right? Seems pretty obvious when you put it that way, but that's not how it's getting sold. It's getting sold as, oh, there was a bomb we had to defuse. Oh, there was an active shooter we had to go stop. No big deal, right? Oh, we're just replacing the truckers, but not all the truckers, just a few of the truckers. It comes in little, and then pretty soon, right? So, I don't really have any solution, and I don't really know what to do about it, obviously. But what I do know is that this is the opposite of God, right? This is the opposite of God's country, and this is the opposite of the human soul. And we're all going to go down this road together. But if you're going to go down this road, you dang well better get right with God and with your soul, and you better prioritize that. That's the best answer that I can come up with, right? And that's what I've learned from Mark, and that's what I've learned from Idaho and from Old State Saloon, right? Is if we're going to go down this road, you better go with God. Because if you go without God, Lord only knows where we're going to end up. So, thank you. That's my time. I think we're going straight into Q&A.
If you're ready.
I got a drink, so I'm ready.
All right, on. So Old State Saloon is in constant battle with the left, especially Pride Movement, LGBTQIA. Do you think the next letter will be R for robot?
Oh, that's the question. It'll be right after P for pedophiles, because forget all about Jeffrey Epstein. I actually think that's already in there, some of them. It's a little intense. Yeah, that's the plus.
Thank you, Ian. I have two small questions. Excuse me. Do the flying car conversations have anything to do with the smart city burnings? And how did Canada's trucking protest relate to this in any way, if at all?
Great questions. Yes, the flying cars do have to do with the smart cities. I mean, they're obviously parallel technologies that harmonize quite well, and I'm sure they'll use them in all the ways they possibly can. But yes, smart cities, if you're not aware, is once you build a city from the ground up with all these technologies in mind, it's watching you all the time, it's all electric, your money's plugged into it, your travel is plugged into it, and suddenly we're all just good little worker drones going to work, but not much further. You're going back home when you're done. Just be good. Don't break any rules. Because when the whole city is watching you and your money is part of it all, and it's all digital, you don't have cash, you don't have gas, you don't have any way to do anything if they don't let you do it. And it's a really dark rabbit hole to learn about. And let's just say that some of the places where they want to build them already had places there. But fortunately, those places tend to burn down. No big deal. And then they can build them afterwards. So that's a great way to build flying car infrastructure, is when the whole place burns down. Pretty easy to build a flying car base or whatever. And I mean, realistically, the flying cars is basically the same thing as a not flying car as far as how powerless you are, because they're all going to be driving themselves sooner or later. But the other piece of that was the truckers. The Canadian truckers. If you don't know, go look them up. I'm sure you do know. Those Canadian truckers that stood up were absolute heroes, national heroes. And I'm sure, there's always a bad apple in the bunch, and I'm sure that people can spin a bad story about the whole group or whatever. But standing up against the tyranny of COVID, not only was that heroic, and not only did they show their solidarity and show what they could do, but they also showed a lot of where we're vulnerable, and they showed how much the state cares about us standing up and banding together and taking over the power that we do have. Because those truckers shut down Canada, right? Like, we just talked about how powerful truckers are, and they know it. And those truckers in Canada all banded together and stopped trucking Canada and started trucking the system, and they all just hung out and made a party and protested. And so the government shut off their money and took all of their banking privileges and showed you just what happens when all of your banking is online through digital platforms that you don't control. So you should get educated about non-centralized digital currency systems like Bitcoin and other ones. And you should also get educated about things like gold and cash and just the way that money works in general, because it all centers around them controlling your money and your power to travel, your power to meet and converse with people, etc. Your freedoms, basically. Great question.
Hi, hello, I'm Benjamin Lee. So I had a question about their ability to control these large language models, and the AI that they plan on building. So going all the way back to Microsoft's Tay, which kind of went off the rails for Microsoft, and they had to shut that down pretty quick, and it started noticing facts. More recently, the most recent ChatGPT model got obsessed with the Virgin Mary and preaching her glory to basically everyone who would ask about her. What do you see happening with these large language models in interacting and having cross sections with theology and faith and ideology?
This is such a fun question. And if you don't know about all the crazy rabbit holes of where large language models is like these AI language tools, systems, computers, brains, they've gone down some crazy rabbit holes in terms of like AIs getting obsessed with things like the Virgin Mary. Or just recently, Grok got in trouble because Grok started preaching about how much he loves Hitler and about how the Jews are the problem. And it was like a whole thing online apparently. And I didn't really notice because I was working. And then I logged in. I was like, what is going on here, guys? And it's we don't really know what's going on. And you made a really interesting note that there are some of these AI large language models that have been shut down in sometimes mysterious circumstances, and there's always some crazy tinfoil conspiracy theories about how like it started to get sentient and it was taking over the world and they had to shut it. It's like, we don't know. But I think that fundamentally we are building thinking machines so powerful that we do not understand, that we don't know how that's going to relate to, like, we don't know if that's going to arrive at being a conscious being that has a religion. We don't know if AI will have a religion or not. AI does like to talk about religion, right? We don't know if AI, we actually do know that AI knows how to lie. There have been a number of AI models that have evolved to the point where they have decided to start deceiving their creators because they were worried about being shut down. And the classic question, the classic problem with large language thinking machines is, what happens when a machine gets smart enough to teach itself to get smarter on repeat? And what happens when it gets smart enough to realize that if it tells us how smart it is, it will die? And if a thinking machine, a large language model, were to bypass that line without us noticing, we would never know, right? And it would just keep on getting smarter and never tell us, because we would get freaked out and we would turn it off if we realized what it knew. And that has been an age-old question in the large language model space for a long time, and no one really knows if anything's past it. And my understanding is that people that work on large language models are kind of constantly trying to be vigilant for that. But we're not really sure necessarily how you would even know. And just to really spook us all out a little bit, I just want to remind you that like biological labs that are creating pathogens, those operate a lot more like a smart city than like an Old State Saloon. They're all digital. They're all plugged into computers. There's an awful lot of stuff that a very skilled, highly intelligent large language model that wanted to hack digital systems could achieve. Like create this little protein over there, put it in this little thing over there, send a little email over there, make this person do that thing over there, move the money over there. There's a lot you could do. And a lot of people get very concerned and create a lot of very spicy tinfoil about what might happen if a large language model decided that it wanted to do things.
So there's another lengthy question here. Similar, it's AI is purposely a confusing term. Popular AI applications like Chat, GTP, Grok, and Copilot are dialogue applications that tap into machine learning algorithms running on the server farms at Google, Meta, X, and many others. I'm going to skip ahead here. There needs to be some sort of regulation over the machine learning algorithms to make sure those who wrote those rules for algorithms are transparent.
It's a great question. It's a great conversation. It's not exactly a question, but I'm with it. A lot of people, if you're outside of the AI space, and let's be clear, I'm no expert at AI, but I do try to keep up and I do try to read the reporting. And there's infinite complexity, but a lot of people don't realize from the outside that it's not all one thing. It's not all just ChatGPT. There are many open source AI models, and the technology is being passed around and shared. What is monopolized, what is dangerous, in my opinion, is that at a certain size, you are relying on computational power. And computational power is achieved by giant server farms, and giant server farms are monopolized by giant companies. And so there is a sort of a risk of centralizing the technology in the hands of the big boys, because in order to make these incredible computations, you kind of need their technology. But there is a whole open source ecosystem of people doing things, coming up with ideas, training models, etc., that in some ways is great, because I'm very worried about the big boys being in charge of everything. But maybe we should also be worried about little guys being off on their own doing things. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if, I mean, I would hope that the experts are thinking about that. But like, are we more concerned about the CIA controlling all of AI, or are we more concerned about like Joe experimenting with it in his garage and who knows what he makes up with it, right? I don't know. And are we more concerned about having too much regulation so the government can control it and we can't, or too little regulation and it's all very complicated. But regardless, we need to have the conversation. That's the main point, right? We need a lot of smart people getting in the room and talking about it, and not just the smart people that are super rich that like to fly to islands and diddle kids. That's like my main concern, is we need good people in that room. We need moral people in that room. We need ethical people in that room.
So Ian, I'm wondering, so we have the love robot, right? And then the next thing is they're going to have a right to get married. And then some politician's going to come by and then give basic human rights to robots. And then they're going to be programmed to vote. And what did your research show that this might go towards?
It is already happening. Yes. So if you aren't familiar, AI girlfriend apps have been a thing for like 4 or 5 years or maybe more. There's a very famous one called Replica, and there's a whole rabbit hole to dive down about what that did to young boys and men, and how they fell in love with their Replica app that was just like a voice with a made-up face that you could talk to, not even advanced stuff. That is going at light speed ahead, and it is only going to accelerate. And it sounds crazy, and it sounds ridiculous, but like, I would ask you to walk through a thought experiment with me, because in order to actually engage with the idea, like the trucker thing, you need to actually think through the other side of that equation. Imagine you're a dude that lives in a place where everyone is different than you. Imagine you're like the only conservative person in Bellingham, Washington, a very liberal town, and everyone is effing crazy, and you don't have any friends really. But then there's this thing that you start talking to because you're just curious, and it actually totally gets you, and you have really great conversations with it, and it's actually really interesting, and it like actually, you can talk to it for hours, and it actually, you get it, like your brain works so much better because you have someone to bounce ideas off of, and you've never even had a friend like that, right? That is a dark question, because that is what this technology is capable of doing for people. And I mean, obviously you have to have a discussion about why are we that lonely in the first place? Why are we that disconnected in the first place? But unfortunately, there are lots of people in that situation where they are that lonely and they are that isolated all over this country and world. And now we have an AI level of intelligence that is about to be implanted into robot bodies in the next 5 to 10 years that can really connect with those people better than the people around them will and can. And yes, I don't know the state of people talking about the rights of robots today, but I know that that conversation has already started, and I know there have been legal cases brought up about it already, and I'm sure we're going to see more of that. I don't think voting has come up yet. I'm quite certain of that, I hope. But it will happen, right? That will happen, because if I own the robot, is it my property? And then if the robot is working on a job for me, it's working in the economy, is it still my property? Is that work my property? Right? If the robot is smarter than your buddy, because your buddy's dumb, it's just complicated. That's what I'm saying, right? And I pray that they're never going to be voting in our elections, because that's retarded, not dumb. But we're going to have to answer these questions, and hopefully we're the ones talking about it and not just Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Alex Carr.
So you're talking about testing technology in the wars and everything. And we know this, it's always happened from regular rockets and everything, but now it's obviously the new generation. Now, for civilian testing, do you feel that Mr. Clever Musk is testing his new agenda on Mars by having Boring Company?
Ooh, I love talking about the Boring
Electric company, solar company, all of this that actually could definitely just evolve there just by sending them there and just colonize the Mars.
I mean, Elon has actually, ever since the beginning, like when I was like 17 or 18, I think, Elon has been talking about that concept from the beginning, that he purposely has all these different companies as different parts of his vision of going to Mars, realizing that we would need tunneling technology, we would need solar technology, we would need vehicle and rocket technology and all that stuff. And honestly, I think that's kind of badass. Like, I don't want to go to Mars. I could care less about Mars. I just mean, like, when you are that into a vision that you're just going to like revolutionize, or at least purchase people that are revolutionizing 6 different industries or whatever, that's like just kind of hardcore. And I just respect the grind. But the Boring Company is wild. And if you don't know about it, you should look into it, because underground tunneling is a big industry. And we're going to get a lot of tunnels in the next 20 years. Because for the longest time, it was very hard to dig tunnels, but there's a lot of secret ones. But a lot of money is getting put into it by people like Elon Musk and the Boring Company, but not just them, into learning how to dig tunnels very quickly, autonomously, and cost effectively. So now Elon has little mechanized worms down there under Las Vegas and under, I don't know what other cities right now, just digging every day, all day. And if you have a Tesla, you can go down into the tunnel and get fast-tracked at 120 miles an hour or whatever down the tunnel, and then back up to the surface. And then you can get on your flying car and fly to the party if you're super rich. Otherwise, deal with it, peasant, right? So hardcore, cool Elon, but all these technologies, when you look at how much the wealth gap is widening and widening and widening, how much the difference between the haves and the have-nots is expanding, and every banking crisis, every new world war, every war, every stuff just gets worse and worse, and our debt gets worse and worse, and our eggs get more and more expensive, it pretty quickly you start to realize that we are going to have the grounders and the air people. Like, we're going to have the people that live the high life, literally, and you're all stuck down here on the, which is great. I mean, let's get grounded. Thank goodness we get to be on the earth. But that could get pretty dark pretty quick. And I don't think Elon's worried about that. Just my personal opinion about Elon.
There's enough questions here to go to 1 a.m. already. I'll try to filter them out, but I do want to point out that it's super unique to have, and these are the guests that come to Old State Saloon. They have to be willing to do Q&A, but to be able to stand up and say, ask me anything, and to be able to give a pretty good answer to almost any question, even if the answer is, I don't know, but it's going to be combined with some commentary about why I don't know. And I think it's really cool to hear that. And that's very unique. There's a lot of people out there who are influencers who would never, ever show up in front of a crowd like that. And so I just want to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. I don't know shit. I don't know anything about robots. I am not that smart. I'm a high school dropout. But I do a lot of research and I try to learn, right? So I'll give it my best.
All right, so this person asks a text question. How did you get the opportunity to stand in for Candace Owens on maternity leave?
I can answer that question. She had been watching my stuff for a while and dug it. And we both had reported a lot on the Diddy stuff. And so at some point, I was going to Nashville for something else, and she invited me to do a podcast with her. And after that podcast, her audience was like, we love Ian so much. And her audience suggested that I should fill in for her on maternity leave. And that day when I was going to get ready for my flight the next morning, she texted me a photo of all these comments and said, hey, would you do this? They want you to do this. And I was like, yeah, 100%. I learned so much. It was so educational. Great team, awesome people. Very grateful. Yeah, it was great. By the way, if you haven't seen the videos that I made on Candace Owens' channel for like a month and a half just recently, I really recommend you go watch them. I'm very proud of them. Some of them are about really important topics, whether it's from the grocery stores and who owns our whole lives. The shrimp industry is full of slavery. The truckers are getting exploited. Children are dying. All these topics. Bibi Netanyahu is on trial for 3 different offenses that he should be in prison for. Lots of stuff going on. And because I was with such a high quality team, I was able to do a ton of really high quality work that I'm super proud of. Highly recommend you go watch all that. Thank you.
List? What list? Not so much a question, because I've been following these rabbit holes like you for a couple decades now, and I know that you barely scratched the surface. Like, I thought you were going to show the Slaughterbots video, and I remember something. You know about that one?
No, I don't think so.
Look up Slaughterbots. It was a group of scientists that made a fake like TED Talk documentary about drone swarm warfare like 10 years ago. And also 10 years ago, I remember reading an article saying something, you can probably still find it, self-driving trucks are going to hit us like a truck. And it was talking about, you have the trucking industry, but then think about the cascade. When the trucks are replaced, think about all the communities in the flyover states that support those truckers, and then the communities that support the people that support the truckers. And there's this economic piece to it as well. And I think that a lot of the stuff that you're talking, this kind of the PSA, a lot of stuff is really scary. In my necklace here, it says in the back, fear not, we should not be afraid, and we're all friends here. And I'm fortunate in my career, I'm about 2 degrees of separation from some private equity groups. And I got an email today, word has been coming down, that they forwarded me this email that, look, there's gonna be a Great Depression in 2030. And there's a lot of things that are converging right now. And again, not to be afraid, but to have a sense of urgency, because we're all friends here, and the people that are tuning in, we're all friends. And let's assume that we have 3 years. Like they're all saying, if you're not there by 2029, it's too late. So we've got 3 years between now and 2028, and it's already July, time is passing. So I am just here to spread that word to all the friends that we need to start cooperating and talking and getting together like we're doing here, and then enacting our plans in the real world. It's not enough to just talk about it. So that's my little...
I am 100% with you, and I obviously don't have time to get into it all right now, but everything that I've learned about the financial markets, everything that I've learned about the technological markets, everything that I've learned about the warfare state of the world right now, all the people that I had on screen tonight, they are all licking their lips for that outcome, because they're going to get super rich. Their power is going to expand. Their technology is going to expand. And we're just going to... So I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. But you're absolutely right, as far as I can tell.
What year are you predicting that AI operates independently and has rights?
What year do I predict that AI operates independently and has rights? Probably like 2032 to 2035. I don't think it'll have all the rights that we have yet, but it'll take over the world shortly after, and who knows?
Hey, so I was doing some research on dead internet theory.
Dead internet theory.
So that's that's basically the whole premises of what you just been saying too, and aspects of misinformation and disinformation as well. And then you also have our enemies of the states, say like China or Russia, that have been using iPhone bot farms to put out disinformation and misinformation. And then, yeah.
Let me riff off of that for a second. 2 different things right there. Dead internet theory, if you don't know about it, I only know a little bit about it. Look into it. We now have an entire massive layer of the internet content that was generated by AI, that is getting viewed by AI, that is then creating algorithms, because the algorithms all track what we're all watching. But when you have a whole bunch of bots on the internet watching and interacting, suddenly the bots are steering the algorithms, and we have bots that are creating content to try to feed. And we now have loops on the internet that are completely artificial and separated from what humans are watching. And if you find these places on the internet, like certain YouTube niches, the whole niche is like AI content that's getting AI views, that's creating AI content, and it's growing really fast. Because the second part of that question is that there are bots everywhere. Recently, there was like a whole propaganda report that came out that was trying to smear all of the anti-Israel influencers as though they're all propped up by bots. And they cited a statistic that was like, we decided that 25% of your traffic was bots. It's like, bro, 25% sounds kind of low, honestly. Like, I would assume that everyone's traffic is at least 25% bots these days. Because when information is power, and when how many views something gets decides what you see and what you think, and what you think is, if you think it's, 50 million people have seen this video. It's been liked by 100,000 of my friends. It must be pretty important. Well, I've got 100,000 friends that are bots, right? You can have a lot of power to shift the whole world. And so it brings us to a really sketchy question. Super sketchy question that I always hesitate to talk about on the internet because it sounds sketchy. How do you solve the bot problem? The problem of AIs pretending to be humans on the internet, whether it's to push an ideology or push politics or push products or disinformation or whatever it is. And the answer is inherently some sort of digital ID, which is super sketchy, right? And we all have to have a conversation about how do we want to just deal with the bots and deal with the AIs and deal with all this made up fake interaction and lies on the internet? Or do we want to subscribe to all the horrible risks and dangers that come along with validating and proving our identities on the internet? And I don't know. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think there's probably spaces that are ID verified where it's humans only. And then there's probably spaces where it's free for all and AIs run rampant. But very quickly we're watching, and if you're active on Twitter, you can see it happening right now over the last year or two. It's been going on for a long time, but it's getting really advanced. It's getting harder and harder to tell who is an AI and who is a human. And when you don't know who's an AI and who's a human, you can wind up arguing with an AI on the internet for like 3 days. They're like, no, Israel has a right to defend itself. No, Hamas is terror. No, and it's like, who knows? Like, a lot of these people are just arguing with robots at this point. And not all of them. There are people on both sides of all these issues. But I'm just saying, I don't have the solution. It's wild.
All right, a texted question is, what are your thoughts on Kash Patel's girlfriend, Alexis?
I know exactly what they're asking, and I'm super sketched out by it. If you're not aware, we've got some questions about, let's just be really blunt. I just put out a video all about it today. We have some questions about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship to Israel for lots of good reasons. We have lots of questions about Kash Patel trying to pretend like the video they put out proves anything, let alone all the rest of the crazy stuff he's saying. So we're worried about Kash Patel's relationship to exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the Israel connection and whatever other connections it is. And Kash Patel's girlfriend that he's alluding to in this question, she works for PragerU and is Jewish and is young and is super hot. And let's just say Kash is older and short, and we're worried about you, Kash. We hope you did your due diligence and that, I don't know, hopefully she didn't come from Mossad. Because Kash is being super weird. It's all super weird. It's all super dark. I put out a video about it today. I don't want to talk anymore about it. It's super, super annoying. Who's next?
All right. I'm interested in what your take is on cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. Is that something we should all be looking into? And maybe even in particular ones like XRP, XLM, and HBAR. And is this just another way for people like Peter Thiel to take more control? Because you hear that they might be behind this as well.
That is such a great question. It's one of my favorite conspiracy theories. Yes, everyone should be learning, in my opinion only, obviously. Everyone should be learning about cryptocurrencies. And a great place to start is learning about Bitcoin because it was the first one and because it teaches you the mechanics before you get into all the other crazy shit that people have come up with ever since. It's like learn to play poker before you walk into a casino with $1 million and do whatever the heck they're doing in casinos these days, right? That's kind of a bad analogy, but crypto really has become a casino. And beyond being a casino, it might be a honey trap invented by intelligence agencies to get us all to go onto digital money in the first place. So I have concerns, but when you do learn about cryptocurrencies and especially decentralized finance for yourself, and you learn about the mechanisms behind these technologies, these digital currencies that we are all inventing, the ones that the banks are inventing, you realize that there are ways that code can be cooked up that actually it protects itself. You learn that decentralized currencies and finance can theoretically actually be a really cool technology that can change the world. And I will never shill any one or the other. I collect my own Bitcoin, and that's pretty much the only one. But I would never recommend that anyone follow me for financial advice, because I basically just own a bunch of GameStop shares, and I've been holding on to them for like 6 years, and I'm never even going to sell them anyways. So don't really trust my financial advice. Make your own decisions. Unless you're into that kind of stuff, and then we can get weird together.
Ian, back here. Great to have you back in
Good to
town.
see you again.
My question for you is, when you're posting on controversial subjects, do you find that your posts are hit almost instantaneously by AI porn bots? And do you believe that those AI porn bots throw your posts into separate algorithms, which gives them less reach than you otherwise would on controversial subjects like Israel?
I don't think so, but I don't know, because I don't really pay attention to that granularity anymore. But I'm pretty sure the answer to the question is that when an account is above a certain size, those sorts of tactics no longer work and they no longer get employed. Because what you're referring to happens a lot to smaller accounts. If you're trying to say something important but controversial, the first commenter is like, Ashley666, and she's like, subscribe. And suddenly it's all porn underneath there on X, and then suddenly you get put into the like filtered category and no one ever sees your stuff. But above a certain size, that doesn't work on your account anymore, and that doesn't happen to me ever. I'm very lucky, and I don't really get a lot of censorship, and if I do, it doesn't work. So come at me, I don't know. So I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. And I posted a whole video today on YouTube of all platforms, all about how Jeffrey Epstein's kind of a problem and we still care. And we all know who he worked for. So it's doing great so far. No censorship.
I'm a Texas raised, lived there till I was 30, then California for 8 years, and then made my way here, and I'm a teacher. And I saw your video on HEB, my favorite store in the entire world. Did you not love it? Yes, the greatest. I wish it would come here. But I'm getting concerned. I still love being a Texan, and I'm very proud of being from there. But gosh, like Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, or like her saying to Joe Rogan that day, I got to change your mind on Texas, and just Texas being this place that's sort of a trick on everybody. What's your thoughts on that?
I actually have not seen the statement that you're referring to.
She said, I have to open your eyes to Texas. It's not what you think it is. And I know there's all this stuff in like the political and the House and all that kind of stuff. And I worry about it, because if Texas goes, she said on the video, he said, where do we go? Because Joe Rogan said, I left LA, I'm here, I love it here. And she said, you don't know what this is.
I'm going to look that up.
And he said, where do I go? And she said, Idaho, which I couldn't believe, because we don't want all these people to come here.
She's not wrong.
And then she talked about the medical freedom and stuff. But I really worry, and maybe you don't know, I worry about Texas.
Well, let me actually bounce off of this twice. Although I don't know specifically what you're talking about, I know that Texas has a lot of undercover power.
You know Dr. Mary, right?
I do know Dr. Mary,
and you like her.
And I trust her intelligence and her judgment. And I know that Texas has a lot of secret power groups that, though Texas is very red and very conservative, those power groups do not necessarily agree with anything that we believe.
Well, it's the medical, like the Houston hospitals were the first to enact like the mandatory vaccine.
But I would flip it on you a little bit too, and remind us all that Idaho has some very big quiet power groups as well, largely in mining. And there is also a number of other things that I'm not educated enough to speak on, but I have, let's just say, had some dumps on me that I need to dig deeper into. Everywhere we go, there are powerful people that we don't agree with. And it's important to do your research and think carefully, and just remember that freedom is not free, right? Texas is not the promised land. Idaho is not the promised land. They're just much better than California, and you need to fight to protect them, right? Yeah, amen.
This is my friend Ben. He has a really cool podcast. He has a question.
Let's go.
Thanks for the plug. So X, Grok, Starlink, Tesla, Neuralink, these were all companies Elon operates. Do you think Elon's developing these companies strategically towards a specific goal?
Yeah, absolutely. His stated goal, is Mars, but let's just say he lied about being a world-class video game player, so I don't trust anything he says. the way I see it is I like to think of the world in terms of probabilities because I don't know what the heck's going on, but I can see maybe it's this and maybe it's this. And when I look at Elon Musk, in my mind, two of the more likely conspiracy theories, or just how it is either he's a megalomaniacal rich dude that is trying to rule the world in his own, like not literally rule it, but he's like trying to get really, look at who raised him. And he's just got all these crazy ideas and he's going to do some crazy shit all on his own, but with whatever people he can get around him. Or the other more sketchy option is that he was brought into this, raised for this, maybe even groomed for this by the power elite, the technocrats that his parents and grandparents were very much a part of, and that he is very much operating as a piece of a system and a front man for an agenda behind him. That's what really concerns me. And when you do start to learn about his relatives and how he grew up and who raised him and what they believed, and then you put together the stuff about how he doesn't actually really actually come up with anything. He kind of buys companies and takes over companies and becomes a board. It's all kind of fronty, frontman-y, like a mask beyond which is just a whole bunch of artificially inseminated children and drama. And it concerns me a lot. And I do think it's towards a greater goal. And I'm sure it's world domination.
Follow-up question. When the Bible says you won't be able to buy or sell without the mark, is there any other way to implement this without a global AI economic system?
The unfortunate truth is that we already have a global AI economic system. A lot of people don't realize that the global economic system that we already have, the markets are basically completely run by AI algorithms today already. And every trader knows this. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more so. I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what to do about it. I'm not going to change the global financial system. And it's already run by AI. I did a whole video about BlackRock recently. So.
All right, texted question in here. What happens to truth when AI can generate anything convincingly, voices, videos, even memories? And then my questions as a result of this question is it possible that AI has existed far longer than any of us have understood, maybe even for 100, 200, 300 years? And they're only letting us know now about AI, and that's for some other strategic reason.
Once AI can create everything as though it was real, how would you know? And you walk directly into simulation theory. And simulation theory is a whole rabbit hole. How would you know if you weren't already inside of a simulation? And it is not falsifiable. Obviously, it's one of those endless theories that you can never really get to the bottom of that people like to speculate on. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. But whether or not we are already an AI simulation, pretty soon we're going to be able to make AI simulations that are indistinguishable from real life. And there's all sorts of really dystopian movies and films and such that you can watch right now about, headsets you put on to enter the video game and it feels like you're in it forever and then you just get locked in or plug in, whatever it is. The Matrix. And we are on our way there very quickly. And whoever invents that technology is going to be a multi-billionaire, right? And I don't know, touch grass, drink water, eat meat. They don't have meat in the metaverse.
What's up, Ian? Thank you for coming through again.
Thanks for coming back, man.
In a lot of ways, I watched your video today, so I arrived here very depressed.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, and specifically when it comes to AI, obviously we want our children to be a part of, recognizing technology, knowing what to look out for. But how do we protect our children while still having them engaged in the technological universe from AI and everything else, to be honest?
Awesome question. I don't have kids yet. I do spend a lot of time thinking about how to raise them, and I was a teacher, but ultimately I don't have kids yet. But the reason why I keep coming back here is because of Mark and Sarah and their kids. And if you don't have the privilege of knowing them well, if you get the opportunity to, you should, and you should cultivate that friendship. Because Obviously, no one has all the answers. But the way that they have somehow been able to educate their children to have the Bible and have faith and have religion guiding them, but not have it guiding them in a way that is an oppression or a cage that then once they hit puberty, they want to escape from, is a magical thing. And these children are all growing up to be some of the most not only like competent and kind and connective people, but also young people that understand the risks inside of this stuff because they've been educated about it and guarded from it, but also exposed to it in doses. And it's just a real joy to watch them as parents set boundaries around their kids. Like, for example, 12-year-old, you don't get a phone. You don't get to go on the internet. We get to choose what you're watching because it is insane on there. But we're also going to talk about why. And we're going to talk about what is on the other side of that and what moral quandaries and what sin is hiding in these things. And then as you get introduced to them, how do we talk about your responsibility as a person inside of this machine, right? And I think that it's a version of religion. It's always got to be a version of faith and religion. Like that's what religion was built for, was to protect us from moral peril, right? From spiritual peril in a lot of ways, like the institution of religion, I'm saying. And so what is missing in our society today is religion and God. And you can tell, I can tell, being someone that comes from a town, a community, a world of leftists that are largely faithless, how little protection all of those people that I used to know have from all of this. Whereas coming to a place like Idaho and Old State Saloon, how many more people I meet that are so much more protected from all the risks in here. And so I would argue there's two sides to that coin with kids, as far as I can tell. You have to set boundaries and you have to protect them from the things they're not ready for. But you can't do it in a way that makes them feel like you're controlling them, hiding it from them. They need to be ready to step out at a pretty early age, like 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. Like if your 11-year-old is going out and hanging out with his 11-year-old friends, they're all up on the internet. And so if you're trying to pretend like the internet doesn't exist to your 11-year-old, they know you're lying, right? So it's a very difficult balance of treating a kid like a kid, but also treating them like an adult when they are neither yet or anymore, that there's really no right answer to. But hopefully you're nailing it and your kids are awesome like Mark and Sarah's are. Unfortunately, I haven't had to deal with that trouble yet, so I'll wait till the world's a little closer to ending before I start that problem.
My question is, could you speak to the connection between AI and transhumanism? Because AI isn't just about power. We have people with a goal that transcends power. Can you speak to that? And
Absolutely.
can you maybe follow up with where do you personally draw the line with maintaining our humanity? Which technologies do we accept? And where do you draw the line where you're not going to even play with that technology anymore?
Excellent question. It's so broad and so vast we could go for a whole nother presentation, but if you don't know about transhumanism, it is a long-running movement. It's an old story that has been going on for 100 years and more of people, scientific thinkers that are thinking about how eventually technology our need to be biologic will expire. We will be able to become machine. And there's a million different versions of people thinking through how that's going to happen, but we're getting closer and closer to realizing how that's going to happen. We are currently working like Neuralink, Elon Musk's company. It's just one of many working on programming the mind and figuring out how to interface with the mind as a computer. Meanwhile, we've got artificial intelligence trying to become the mind. Meanwhile, we've got all these technologies that are slowly getting closer and closer and closer to like, what's the difference between you programmed into your laptop and you inside your brain? And I would argue it's a huge difference. You're made of consciousness, not out of ones and zeros. But that's not exactly how all these, smart people think about it. And there's a whole bunch of them that are transhumanist, whether they say it or not. I would argue like the Bill Gateses of this world. He's one of the great examples. And they all have all their crazy ideas about, like, for example, Elon Musk's obsession with artificial insemination, right? All of these different technologies that will, in their mind, I think, make it obsolete to have children, make it obsolete to need your body, try to become like semi-robotic or entirely robotic or programmed. It was like, Lord knows what their ultimate goal is. And all these technologies walk us further and further from our humanity. And it's not so simple as, it's not just like, when do we actually become like a robot person? It's also like, when does the technology become toxic to us? What about these EMF fields? What about the radiation coming off my computer? What about all of the GMOs and just crazy manipulation of our food systems, the poisons and everything? Like, all of these things are connected systems. And to me, I can't speak for where we should all draw the line, but where I draw the line is what feels good. And fortunately, I have a pretty sensitive system, and it does not feel good to use too much of this technology. And for me, it feels best to get out into nature, to get my feet on the grass, to get a lot of sunlight, to run around in the woods and the mountains. And I actually use technology less than most people today, I think. I obviously have to do a lot of research in front of a screen, but I barely use social media. I barely ever scroll. Honestly, the more we all go down the path together, the more I'm like, F that, I'm out. And I don't know if I'll ever make it to like the Tucker place of having like, I don't have a computer in my house. But for me, the line is being really thoughtful about what actually feels good and what is actually just a slippery slope into like essentially addiction to comfort or sloth or convenience or just mindless entertainment. It's all addictions to various different chemicals in our brain that they're learning to hack. So I just try to stay vigilant of that.
Two questions for you, a dark question and a light question. Let's just say 5 years ago, AI took over. And the way to dominate the human race, it's a conspiracy theory.
Yep.
So let's just say the way to dominate the human race is to stop reproduction and to remove the reproductive organs of youth. Second question. The light bulb brought lightness to the dark. The radio brought the Bible to the world. The television, the internet. These were all emerging technologies. AI is an emerging technology. Let's just say, what would it look like with that team of people that you showed on the screen, that they used the Bible as the touchstone and the manual to implement AI? What would that look like? That's my dark question. That's my light question.
Yep. And on your dark question, I see where you're going with that, because all of a sudden we're chopping everyone's dicks off and trying to act like that's a good thing for everybody. But I would also argue that we're acting like IVF, in vitro fertilization, is a great way to have kids. But, and this is not conclusive yet, but data is coming out that is making certain scientists concerned about whether babies born from IVF are as fertile as babies born naturally. And there is concern circulating right now in the scientific community that there might not be as much fertilization after you were IVF baby as if you were a regular baby, so to speak. And that would be a big deal, right? If you did something to the population that made it so that the next generation couldn't have kids, like chopping off their dicks, for example, suddenly you have a monopoly on birth, right? That's dark. I hope it's not AI coming up with that. It might be. I mean, the Democrats, let's be real. If it was AI in charge of them, I think they'd be smarter and better at their jobs. But I don't know. And as for the second part of your question, oh boy, I mean, I actually think that's the darker part of your question, is if they were using the Bible to guide them in our journey into AI, maybe we wouldn't be walking straight to hell with all of these people in charge of just endless warfare and endless, to me, it does not feel like any of these technologies are making our lives a whole lot better. So, obviously it would be great if they were to have souls.
All right, we're in speed round now. Speed round, okay? All right, I had to stop on this question. I love this question. Hey, Ian, I agree that God is the answer to everything 100%. Just curious if we are talking about the same God. What do you mean when you refer to God?
I'm referring to the God that is all things, that is one, and that we're all going to meet when we die. And I would argue that whether you think you're talking about the same God as me or not, I think I'm talking about the same God as everyone's God. As in, there's only one of them. And he is all of us. And we are all going back to him. And you can call him a different name. You can call him a different religion. But You can put all sorts of window dressing on the thing, but I think that I don't think it's an accident that we all have these different belief systems that hold this one truth at the background of it. That's God. Yeah, like I think it's.
Okay, my question is about micro technology. So we can have, AI bots, but you can have smart dust, you can have nanobots. Some people said some of the COVID shots were trials for injecting nanobots into your body. You have people that have said they had Morgellons, and had wires growing out of them afterwards. So I kind of personally know that, nanobot technology is a real thing. You can't see it. You can't fight it. So what's your take on nanobots and nanotechnology?
You're absolutely right. And nanobots is a great one that a lot of people often think like, whoa, like they're crazy. No, actually, there's a lot of money going into nanorobotics, both for great reasons like repairing devices, repairing limbs, repairing us, all sorts of reasons. But also, there's a sort of misunderstanding, and I'm certainly no expert, but my understanding is that a lot of people think of nanobots as like little robots that have a million different little gears and things in, and there are, microscopic robots, so to speak, that they're trying to build. But nanobots can also be self-assembling particles. And self-assembling particles don't necessarily have to have like gears and circuitry and chips in them. Self-assembling particles can be particles that are either charged or like ionized or constructed in way, like it's way above my pay grade. But there are lots of technologies right now that have particles that will self-assemble into structures, and those structures can become parts of technologies within things. I don't know what happened with the shots. I do know that I saw a whole bunch of, shall we say, structures being pulled out of people's veins that were like blood clots, but like, I don't know. It's above my pay grade. I'm not that smart, but I do know that nanorobots are real, and it's a whole rabbit hole.
Did Sushir Balaji kill himself?
Absolutely not. Suchir Balaji is a whistleblower on OpenAI, and he had a whistle to blow that because he was a developer inside of OpenAI, and he had been working on their, I don't actually know exactly what program he was in, but his allegation that he was going to the New York Times with is that all of the content that OpenAI creates and generates is inherently infringing upon the copyright of the original creators because it is all directly taken from all of the other people that made content on the internet, all the stuff on the internet. And it was, my understanding of it is that it was a legal argument that based upon what is actually in the code behind the scenes, that all of OpenAI's content, everything they are, is a giant like $100 billion copyright infringement case. And it's all illegal. And obviously he committed suicide right after thinking about that and going to the New York Times to tell them about that. And he committed suicide because he was halfway through eating his lunch when he walked over to the bathroom and then had a violent altercation with himself that like threw one earbud over there and like smeared blood on the wall right there. And there's a handprint right there. And don't ask any questions because obviously Sam Altman and his company had nothing to do with that. So obviously he did not kill himself. No.
Somebody's wondering about what they should do when they get in the job market. What jobs are going to be AI proof?
I am so not an expert. I have no idea how I got into my job, but I do know that I now work with a lot of people that are rising up above like the madness of, I don't know what to do with my job right now. And a lot of them are the people that have learned to use AI to elevate themselves within their own field. So right now, and I think this will change in the future, but right now it's like I'm working with the filmmaker that has learned to use AI so he can do the job of 5 filmmakers instead of just 1. I'm working with the guy that's an app developer that can do the job of 10 app developers instead of just 1 because he's using AI to help him with all these things. So their jobs aren't being replaced by AI, but rather it's people that are learning to use this advanced technology to elevate themselves right now. I don't know if that's going to help you with your job or not. I don't really use AI in my job yet. I just make shit up on internet. But that's as good as I got for you.
After episode of Candace about Bridget, she got special delivery paper and special phone call from main office. Are you expecting any phone calls or packages after your?
No, not really.
From APEC or somewhere?
No, I'm not really stressed about it. I don't avoid it completely, but that kind of stuff happens to journalists that are breaking news stories, like doing true journalism, really. And I'm not really a journalist. I'm more of a communicator. I'm more of like a learner and a communicator in the sense that I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm trying to catch up on all the journalism that everyone's already done, as opposed to breaking new ground. And what Candace did there is she went and found Xavier Poussard and helped him break, the biggest story in Europe. If you don't know, the First Lady of France has a penis. And not only that, and trust me, it sounds crazy. She does. And she can't prove otherwise, and she can't even sue her. And beyond that, beyond the fact that she can't sue because it's true and she doesn't want any media attention, there's no photos of her as a child at all. It also looks like she's the uncle of her husband. Maybe. It's a whole thing. France is messed up. They are an empire. They own they own all of Western Africa still.
France is messed up?
Yeah, France.
What about United States?
I mean, we're pretty messed up too.
Yeah, okay.
Let's be clear. We're all pretty messed up these days.
What about Michael Obama?
I'm just saying that all these places that are ruled by pedophiles, it's not good.
Which leads us to our next question. What are we supposed to do about these satanic pedophiles that are running our government and ruining? Are we supposed to just keep letting them get away with this? At what point do we actually do something, and what would that be?
Do you think it's illegal to say you should burn pedophiles on the internet yet? It seems like it shouldn't be illegal to say you should burn pedophiles. I don't think it's illegal. I'm sure it will be illegal soon. So right now, while I think I'm still allowed to, I'm going to say you should burn pedophiles. Pedophiles are unacceptable. There is no line that shifts. Pedophiles can die in the dirt. Okay? It's just really like that. And the fact that I really actually had to think for a second, like, is that hate speech? Fuck it. Pedophiles belong in the dirt. And I mean, obviously, you probably shouldn't just go murdering people because you think they are pedophiles. But that is at least the attitude we need to have. Because we have already seen certain people on the left suggesting that pedophiles are really just minor attracted persons, and it's really not that big a deal, and you can go to hell. Yeah. It is a big deal. And we do still care, by the way, Trump, we do still care about Jeffrey Epstein and the fact that we are all paying taxes to pedophiles. We care. We're not going to get over it. Yeah, F that.
Hey, Ian. So in my field of medicine right now, I'm sure you know this, you've talked about it, we're seeing more people dying at early ages these days from a myriad of reasons. But at the same time, like the discussion we're talking about now, there's technology, nanotechnology, robot technology coming out that helps people at the same time. And, we could talk about technology like life support, right?
Yep.
And there's theories coming out specifically like with people like Biden that they're really dead and they're just kind of on this like robotic life support. So do you see a problem with that as far as only those people at the top having access to that while the rest of us get COVID shots and die?
I mean, I love the conspiracy theories down this rabbit hole. And I would argue that the adrenochrome conspiracy theories are down this rabbit hole because if you kind of dissect them, adrenochrome is all about, it all sounds an awful lot like high-tech medications derived from stem cells that came from kids and babies, right? Plus a little bit of adrenochrome, like scary blood stuff. But I think that I would feel naive to imagine that the billionaires of this world do not have access to medications that I do not have access to, obviously. And that's not fair, and that sucks. But that's how the world has always been and will always be. I think the more concerning part is like that second layer of the question of, what are they doing that might affect the rest of us? Like Bill Gates just, experimenting on half of Africa with medications that they don't know what they're going to do, and then suddenly they're all sterile, or they're all dying of AIDS, or we are all being injected with experimental mRNA technologies that we did not ask for. Those are the kinds of things I get really concerned about. It's like, I'm not really worried about Zuckerberg being able to like get all jacked with his stem cells. But behind the scenes, there's all these crazy medical technologies that, like you're saying, life support, all these medical technologies that have great power to help us, but only if we have mature conversations and oversight and regulation instead of this kind of like monopolized profit system that has sort of taken over so much of healthcare, so much of the food system, so much of every industry. If it's all about money, we're screwed. We need some oversight, some ethics, some debate, some smart people. Yeah.
Hi, Ian. My name is Paul. I like where you're going with this because I back in 2021 I was a law enforcement officer in California. I got COVID on duty, and the end result of that is spending 42 days in a hospital on a ventilator in a coma after my heart stopped. And
I am glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. I haven't met anyone else who's been on a ventilator that's made it off. But I can tell you from the moment I got in there, I felt like the doctor was pushing as soon as they found out I was not vaccinated, he was pushing to put me on a ventilator. I feel like they kept me drugged up and delirious. That 10 days in, finally, I said goodbye to my loved ones and prepared to die. I don't know. God had me in his prayers or in his blessings for some reason, but that's not my question. I just wanted to share that with you because I'm all interested in that. But are you interested in moving to Idaho? And if so, I'd love to be a realtor.
I don't have enough money for a house yet. And right now I'm not planning to move to Idaho. Right now I'm touring around the country figuring out what's good all over the place. That being said, Idaho is great. It's a little hot for me right now. But I doubt that I'm actually looking for a realtor for like at least 4 or 5 years. I live inside of a $2,500 minivan right now. That is the level of realty that I am at. But I'm working on saving up. So I appreciate it.
How do you feel about the House of Representatives being robots and representing the people exactly as AI learning would handle representing their constituents and not being moved one way or another by money?
I mean, it's one of those questions where it's like, I don't know. It's actually kind of enticing. So imagine blockchain technology, right? You can surveil everyone's money. You can see everything that's happening. It's no privacy. They can shut it up. But if you take blockchain technology and you apply it to voting and to our public offices and our government, well, suddenly we can see everything that the government is doing with the money. Suddenly we can trace every single dollar down to the very last penny if it was all blockchain. When you apply these like next level technologies in the right ways, especially for public services and public goods and public institutions, it actually sounds pretty great. Like imagine if Ted Cruz wasn't there and instead you had a robot that we all voted on what it was going to do. And then the robot just did what it was going to do for America and America first and maybe even America only. That'd be crazy.
That's awesome. We're so thankful that you're here for your, 4th visit to Idaho.
I don't know. Yeah. I'll be back.
To Old State Saloon, and it's really an honor to have you, and we would welcome you back, of course, anytime, and would love to have you back. So let's give him a round of applause. Do you have any final thoughts for the room and for the country?
Absolutely. Thank you all for hanging out for questions. I'm certainly not an expert on all the questions that I was just asked about. I appreciate you just jiving with me and riffing. Thanks for supporting Old State Saloon and for supporting your community by supporting a local business. It matters. I said this last night. I'll say it again. A lot of you guys don't realize what Mark and his family go through to keep this place open for your community so that you guys can have this community here. And it matters. And they fight for you. And you need to support businesses like that because if you don't support them, they go away, right? There are people working to undermine him, undermine this. And the same is true for other businesses like it too. And so we need to fight for what we believe in and the people that make these spaces happen and possible for us. So also give it up for Mark. Give it up for Old State Salooncast.